Hey, what's up, comrades? So, we are like past the age of doing like 15 Bond stories before we do an event story. So we're gonna go right into the event story, and this one's Lone Survivor, or A Lone Survivor, which is the story of Tove, who's the newest member of Unlimited, which is Alice, Ludmilla, and Neve. And then we're gonna do the Bond and treasure story for Tove, and then we're gonna do the Bond story for Neve, because I think she actually came out like super early. She came out with like Anne Miracle Fairy and Rupee Winter Shopper, but I didn't do it then. I'm going to do it now because now she actually shows up and plays a role in like Unlimited, when before I can't remember if she came out then or not. It was a long time ago. But I figure out now's a good time to throw them in there, and then we can just knock out these Bond stories. So in A Lone Survivor begins, we meet Tove. She's watching a survival video. It's talking about surviving in the winter, all these different survival techniques, and she's just repeating them ad nauseum, showing that she has them all memorized, and she's got the books memorized and the TV memorized and everything memorized. Later on, we arrive at Unlimited's base in the north because we were ordered to go there to help them find some Nikkes, and it's not that we can it's not that we're like physically the best, but it's that we are able to inspire people and keep people's the morale up, which is going to be important when hunting for people on like this glitter mountain, which is very dark. And so we say hi to Alice, Ludmilla, and Neve, who Alice refers to as the polar bear, which is apt. They then talk about the mass-produced Nikkes, how we're going to go find them and stuff. And then Ludmilla, who's the squad leader, mentions that we're going to be joined by Tove, who's a new squad member, and that she's an eccentric, but she's a great survivalist, and that she's waiting outside, so we should go say hi. So we do, and we tease her a little bit. And I'm not going to lie, Tove is like one of my top 5 waifus, period. Like her, Naga, Julia, fucking Anchor. Just fucking fantastic. Okay, so she's hot as shit, and she's super funny, and I love her with all my heart. She's super excited after we tease her a little bit, and she takes us over so we can get prepared with all the equipment we need for like the winter cold. Later, as we're all heading out, Alice wants to play in the snow, and Neve wants to make a snow cave and fall asleep, which is kind of her bag. She's kind of like a Freema type character, and Ludmilla's like, stop all this shit. We're gonna keep marching on. So as we do, we're in the back talking to Tove. And she's starting to develop like a cold because she turned her temperature sensitivity all the way up because YOLO, you got to live life to the fullest or whatever. And as she starts sneezing, we're like, maybe you should turn it down. And she's like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Later on, even more, Neve, Alice, and Ludmilla split up to start searching for the Nikkes, while Tove is ordered to stay back with us because we're both tired. But like, it's like, well, you got to protect Survivalist or the commander because he's tired, and someone's going to stay with him, and you can kind of set up a little camp here, just make sure we can have some place to go but come back to. So she's going to do that. And then she's like talking about survival stuff. She talks about using flint and metal to start a fire, and then we help her kind of get that going. And then when the others return, Alice talks about how like under a nearby bridge she found some dog tags, and then also nearby there, Neve found some tracks that lead them all the way up into the Glitter Mountain so that we can follow them. And like, why are they even here? And it's like, maybe they had a mission, who knows? We don't ever get a firm answer why the Nikkes were here, but they're here. Tove speaks up and wants to report in as well, and then gets all flustered because she doesn't know what to say because she's trying to like fit in. And so we help her out. She showed us how to stay warm and how to make a fire and stuff. We proceed further, and then eventually we get to like a big hill, and it's like it's too dangerous for everyone to go down. Like they could go down, but like we wouldn't make it. And then Tove's like, wait, I can make a sled. And so she drags Neve off, and then Alice is like, ooh, fun. And so she runs off too, which gives us a chance to talk to Ludmilla about everyone being in high spirits, which is a good thing, and that's why we're here. A bit later, Tove returns. She's able to craft one sled that's big enough for a Nikke and a human. And Ludmilla wants us to practice with it, like not on this big hill that's kind of the direction we think we should be going, but like on a smaller hill over here. So we hop on there, and then she kind of straps us in, and then we start going down the small hill, but it's not a small hill. It is a huge fucking hill, and there's no brakes on this sled, and then an avalanche starts coming. It's like, the fuck? So Tove's able to steer us out of the way, and then she picks up us and the sled because there's a second avalanche coming, and she runs. But unfortunately, we're stuck in this ravine. There's no phone service out here. She starts to freak out, but we're able to calm her down, talk about escaping. She's encouraged, and she wants to do the best that she can, so we start looking around. So first things first, we're going to find food. So we're going to find some bugs. While we're looking for bugs, the centipede comes out. She freaks out, jumps into our arms. We have to kill the centipede and then hold her for a little bit, which fucking fantastic. And then we eat some grubs, and we're like, and then, she's like, all right, time to eat grubs. And she's like staring at the bugs, and she's like, you should go first because you're a human and you eat it more. So we eat them. We're like, yummy, here you go, your turn. And she's like, And we're like, you just don't want to eat them, huh? And she's like, no, I'm going to do it. And so she does. she then mentions that all this like real life survival stuff is a lot harder than it was in the books and stuff. We next up have to build a shelter because it's getting cold and it's getting later and it's getting colder. So she uses her rifle, and then we get a stick, and we're able to build like this tiny enclosure that can protect us versus the wind, and then we can like cuddle up and cover ourselves up so we can stay warm. As we're doing that, she says she's going to stay up all night and protect us and make sure that we're okay, even after we offer to like take turns. The next morning, she's obviously fell asleep. She's also developed, and we've developed a cold, which sucks. At that point, Tove sees like this strange light in the distance, and she's like, "Oh, that's probably a cabin or something. That must be where the Nikkes must be there." So she picks us up and we ride on her back, which is hot as shit, and carries us up to that point. Once we reach the cabin, we find the radio, which was sending out the distress signal, which kind of like led us to this area in the first place. Also, we find the 6 Nikkes that were missing. 3 are brains in cages, like the brain cages, because their bodies got destroyed, and then the other 3 are like barely holding on to life, and there's no brain cages for them, but their cores are kind of all fucked up. So it's like, oh great. Tove gets a little freaked out again. We morale boost her once again. And then she's like, all right, so we're going to build like a giant flare so that the rest of Unlimited can come and save us. And so she gathers all this material up and everything. We keep giving her encouragement and whatnot. She's like, I'm going to do this. So she climbs up to like the highest point, and she sets these like giant fuse, and it says the fire goes off like a titan in the sky. And it's burning so hot and so fast that it starts to burn her hands and her arms. But she holds on and keeps it going so that we can make sure that we're getting found. Off in the distance, Alice sees the fire, and then the rest of Unlimited race to our aid, and they arrive and start operating a rescue. Ludmilla then gives Tove a hard time for like burning our hands up and her arms, and then gives us some hard truths, because then Tove's like, all right, I rescued everybody. Everything's going to be great. They're going to get new bodies, and everything's going to be great. And then Ludmilla's like, that's not how this works. We're going to go back, and if we take them back to the Ark, the CEOs are probably just going to be like, trash them, whatever. And then the government doesn't have enough time or care, so they're probably going to reject. So what we're going to do is take them back to Unlimited base, and this is we saw in the main story, and they're going to try to reconstruct these Nikkes by giving them like parts of other Nikkes that have been destroyed completely, and just kind of try to like Frankenstein them back to like some sort of usefulness, and then they're going to do rehabilitation and then help them with their psychic damage as well. And then hopefully they can, we worked really hard to save them, but the work has only started, and we're going to keep working at it. Because they work to stay alive, and so we got to give them just as much back. And then Ludmilla asks Tove if she feels like she's cut out for the work and she wants to keep doing this. And before she can like fully answer, we click out to the epilogue. So the Nikkes have been physically rebuilt, and they're going through rehabilitation. We're talking with Tove, and we go to meet them. And one of them, who's kind of the most functional, thanks Tove for everything she did and for saving them and whatnot. We then get this kind of like, and then Tove's like, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. This is what I'm, made for. And then we get this kind of like, as time went by, Tove got better and better and became a full active member of Unlimited and was able to help a lot of people and rescue people and everything. So it's like a nice little end to that story. So first up is Tove's Bond story. So it starts off, we receive a video, and it's of Tove, and she's talking about how she hasn't seen us in a while, but she wanted to give us like a vlog because she's super impressed with Ludmilla, Alice, and Neve, the other members of her squad. They are very good at finding people. They're very good at doing their job and everything, but she feels like they rely too heavily on instinct and luck, and so she wants to bring some like rationale to their situation, or at least update them a little bit with technology. So we follow the video as it takes them on to a mission where they're exploring some uncharted terrain. They getting to a point where it's getting too cold because they're too high up in the mountains, and so they're like, oh, let's just push through and do whatever. And Tove's like, no, wait, let me set up a campfire, we can rest, we can warm up, and then I can find some like animal pelts, and then we can cover everybody except Alice, because she burns like super hot. And then we'll be doing okay. And Ludmilla's like, all right, do it. So she does, and everything works out with that. The next thing we see is that there's huge ravine, and they're talking about how they get across it. And Tove is like, well, let me take these these sleeping bags, and I can make some parachutes out of them. And then everyone else is like, YOLO, and they just leap across the ravine, and they're like, come on, Tove, let's go. And she's like, I don't want to, I'm scared. And Alice is like, don't worry, if you fall, you just fall, and then you climb back up and do it again. Trust me, it's happened to me multiple times. And Tove's like, and so she goes and runs and jumps off the cliff, and the video cuts out. And back in the room, we're watching this, and we're just like, holy Jesus Christ. So we decide we're going to go over and help Tove out. So we go over, we talk about everything that's going on, about how the rest of the squad doesn't really feel like they need to be equipped for anything, like crossing cliffs and whatnot, and that Tove is like confused about how she can help them see the benefit of doing that, but thinks that because we're there, we'll be able to help her as well, and that they don't need to be living in, like, I don't know, the 12th century where they can where they're just like crossing mountains based on like luck and grit and whatnot, that there's all sorts of technological advancements and things that they can do to help them be able to get across. But she doesn't want to start a conflict with the rest of the squad. She wants to get along and have a good time with everybody and whatnot. So we decide we're going to go along with and help. So a few days later, there's a mission where there's some smoke being seen, and so Unlimited's going to go and see if there's any Nikkes to rescue, because it's probably a battle with some raptures. And we decide to come along. Lumilla's like, that's cool. It seems like Tove's having a little rough time, so maybe it's good for her mental health that you just come along and kind of offer her some advice and help her do what she needs to do. So we all venture out, and as we get there, as we're moving along, we come across this giant like frozen river, and Ludmilla and Alice are like, cool, let's just cross it. And we're like, well, wait, maybe we can do something to make it a little less slippery so that we don't fall or whatever. And they're like, okay, like what? And so Tove describes this using like dry leaves and all this other stuff on the shoes to make it so that we can move without slipping. And the rest of them are like, let's just skate across. And Tove's like, but wait. And so Ludmilla's like, watch this. And so she just goes and skates across, and she almost falls a couple times. So she's like, ta-da. And then the other two go, and we look over at Tove, and she's just like, why won't they listen? So the first attempt to help them use more technology and utilize Tove's skills has failed. We discussed with Tove how no one's like really listening to her, and she kind of figures that a comment that Ludmilla made about like, let's just skate, it'll be faster, that's a way to get them to embrace technology more, that if she can find a way to make things a little quicker and faster, then they're more likely to want to do that. So while the rest of them are out kind of looking for water, food, shelter, and whatnot, she sits around on guard duty and crafts some stuff that's going to be helpful. So at some point, so we sleep the night. The next morning, Unlimited, we start, our stomach's like grumbling, right? And so it's like, oh, we clearly need to get some food. So Ludmilla tells Alice to pass out some of the emergency rations, but dun, 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 she's eating them all because she's a pat pig. And so that means we need to find some food. At that point, we asked Tove to introduce this new device that she made. So she made a torch. She just like wrapped some cloth around a stick with some oil, and then she lights it on fire. And they're like, oh, okay, that could be fun. We then find a big worm on a tree and start cooking it, but then the torch keeps going out. Ludmilla then starts complaining about how technology sucks and how it's useless, like her phone that keeps breaking and keeps not working and whatnot. And then there's much easier ways to do this. And then Ludmilla, Alice, and Neve all immediately like find food, like birds' eggs and some more bugs and some berries and whatnot. And some mushrooms and whatnot. And they're like, ta-da! And Tove's like, how did you find that so fast? And they're like, well, we've been doing this a long time. And so with the experience, we've all been in these situations before. We know what to look for, and we know what we're doing, because it's less a matter of like luck and more a matter of like, we've done this, we are familiar with the situation, and we know what to do in these situations, which causes the second attempt for Tove to try to get them to embrace technology to fail again. Wah, wah, wah. We talk some more with Tove, who's like pretty disheartened by this whole situation, and we're able to like buoy her spirits by having her talk about the reason she joined Unlimited in the first place, and what persuaded her to want to come here and to be a survivalist expert and everything. And she's like, all right, I got this. I'm going to spend some time, figure some stuff out while we travel, and then I'm going to have some tools that they're going to love, and it's going to be great. And it's like, cool, sounds good. She also apologizes for trying to conform her comrades to her standards, and realizes that she's got to modify her stuff to meet their standards, right? So if she's trying to introduce them to something, she's got to, instead of trying to force them to come to her, she's got to go to them, right? Which is a very smart and wise way to handle things. Like if you were trying to get somebody to do something, you got to meet them where they're at. After some time passes, we finally reach the site where the smoke was, and we find a lone Nikke who's like dying. Her temperature thing that keeps her warm is all busted up, so she's likely to freeze to death, but she's still alive, and we're like, oh shit, we got to get her back to the Unlimited base like as fast as humanly possible, which is going to be tough because it took us like 2 days to get over here in the first place. At that point, we ask Tove if she has anything that can help, and she takes something out of her bag, and she doesn't just whip one thing out, she whips a whole bunch of shit out. So she apparently at some point was able to kill and skin a puma, and then like when? Oh, Christ. So she also got a bunch of feathers from the bird they killed the other day, a bunch of dried moss, a bunch of other stuff. She made this like super warm coat, and she wraps it around the Nikke, and then she uses the torch, which keeps going in and off, but it stays on long enough to heat up some water, to give her some hot water, which warms her up nice. And so now she's good to go. And how are they going to get her back? Well, she's got an improvised stretcher. She just like whips out of her like fucking point and click adventure game bag. Made with like moss netting and discarded fabric that she just like found while they were like traveling around here. And at first she's like, oh, no one's going to like this and they're going to be upset and they're not going to want to use my stuff. But then we point out that like, hey, they're already going. So Alice is like, I will carry the pumpkin chariot carriage or whatever, because, you know, Alice is completely insane. And then Neve is going to collect more moss on her travels. And then Lumilla starts talking to us all about how, you know, oftentimes they'll find these Nikkes, but they don't have the resources available to like get them back to safety or to help them, because there's no way to prepare for every situation. So the fact that Tove can like come up with shit like with just what they got like around, that's going to be super helpful, is going to be super helpful. For saving more people and getting everybody and making up for the shortcomings of her squad mates. And after she kind of gives that little speech, we congratulate Tove for all her hard work and understanding that she's got to meet them and she's got to accommodate everyone else and work as like a team, and that she can't just like force her point of view on people when it comes to these things. And she mentions that she still has a lot to learn, but that she's going to learn it and she's going to do everything she can to be better. A bit later, after all this adventures, we're back at the outpost and we find another video sent to us from Tove, and she's just reporting in about how the Nikke is recovering well and that everything looks like it's turning out all right, that we're able to get her saved on time. And then she talks about how things with Limited have gotten better too. They start looking at her and treating her more like she's part of the squad, and in fact they sometimes make requests for different items or survival gear or whatever that they might need, and so that's super happy. And Ludmilla, even though some of the stuff is not machine related at all, because if you've forgotten, Ludmilla has a thing where she is like Dresden from the Dresden Files, where technology just like breaks when she's around, so she has to be like very careful about it. Like machines just don't work, but even some of the non-machine tools just break too, because Ludmilla is like, what the fuck, Ludmilla? But that everything's going great, and then she thanks us for being her mentor and helping her and inspiring her and all that stuff, and that she hopes that we can spend more time together in the future, obviously, and that she feels like she's grown and she's going to continue to grow and be able to be an acting force in helping people who are lost out in the wilderness. Which wraps up her Bond story. So Tove's Treasure just came out. I had to play through it, which I did because Tove's awesome and one of my favorite wives. But okay, so in her treasure, she's going through all her supplies, checking to see what she needs, checking to see what needs to be fixed, what needs to be worked on, whatnot. But she gets to her trusty fire starters. She thinks about all the memories she has with it, how it's been so good and done everything that she's wanted, and then she flicks it on to try to get it to do something, and it doesn't work. So she brings it to us. We discuss how it should work and how something happened to it. And then something about Grizzly or whatever, like Bear Grylls, says that no matter what, this thing that occurred, like dumping it in water or something, shouldn't matter. Well, anyway, we don't know how to fix it, so we might go find someone who does, and that person is Senti at Mighty Tools. And we find out Tove and Senti have like a good relationship, but that leader doesn't like Tove coming over here and fucking around too much, so she's been like banned. But good for us. Leader is actually on vacation, so Senti's able to maybe help. Senti talks about how it's easy and that the new fire starter shouldn't be that big of a deal, except the one problem, that they do not have materials for it, that the materials needed for like the rod are very rare and very expensive, and that the only one who's going to have them is Missless HQ, because they're made of like rare earth minerals. So maybe if we go over there, we can buy them from them. So we head over there and we run into Maxwell, and she's just been cleaning up after Laplace and Drake as usual, and she's super pissed off. They collapsed a room or something. Anyway, Tove shows her the rod we need to replace. Maxwell's like, oh yeah, we got plenty of those. I can definitely sell you one of those, and it's for more materials than we could ever possibly imagine having. It's astronomical. So Tove is like, fuck. And then Maxwell, who's listening to us chat about it, she's like, you know, the best place to get a new rod for that would fix your problem. And we're like, where? And it's like, obviously the surface, because a lot of people had these fire starters made of these things, but they're just like lying about out and about. And Maxwell mentions it a few times. She's found some, so that we can head up there next. As we search around, so then we head up to the surface, searching around for the right equipment. And then Tove talks about how much it means that we're there and we're helping her out, and how she feels that she's got to give more to Unlimited and to keep up with them, because they all have like very natural talents and they've been doing this for a long time, and she's like the rookie, and her advantage is her technological know-how, right? We talked about her Bond story. We talk about her confidence and her abilities for a little bit. Eventually we enter a building and she immediately finds a fire starting kit with a new fire starter. She's psyched, so she replaces the rod into hers. We decided we're going to camp out for the night so that we can fuck, at least in my head. So Rated in there, pervert. All right. Anyway, Tove gets the whole place nice, set up and cozy. You know, she sets up decoys, gets like the fire started, all that kind of good stuff. At some point, we see her like writing something on her fire starter on like a little tag or whatever. So we go ask her about it, and we see that there's a whole bunch of names on there, and that they've been recorded. That like every time she gets one of these fire starters or replaces one or whatever, she like records the name of the person she got it from, so she remember like all the previous owners and all the people that kind of owned. And then we ask her if she's going to put her name on it. And she's like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, you should write your name on it. And so she does. And then she writes our name on it too. Oh, because we helped her and we care about her being a survivalist just as much as we do, as just as much as she does. And then we fuck, at least in my headcanon. She's so hot. I can't stand it. Which wraps up her treasure item story. Lastly, we're going to go over Neve's Bond story. I don't know if that's how you say it. That's how I'm going to start saying it. I know I've said it differently, so I apologize. Anyway, Neve she was introduced very early on as an SR unit in a Miracle Snow. And I didn't talk about her then because she's not really in it. She just kind of like appears for like a moment in the, like, I don't know, it's kind of weird. But now she's actually in the game. Like somewhat, like she wasn't in the main story, but she shows up in a Lone Survivor. I think that's the only place. Yeah, that's like the only story that she's in. So Shift Up in the year of our Lord 2025 in November has said that they want to give alternatives to all the SSR units, and they made this comment right after they released the Delta Ninja character. So that leaves us with Neve, Ether, and Belota, who don't have SSR equivalents, because we're going to get to Mika next week, or in 2 weeks, when we talk about the next event. And then the rest of them have already gotten some, because Ainz, Rappy, and Neon all have SSRs at this point. We haven't talked about Rappies, that comes much later. But Neon and Ainz we already talked about because they had summer costumes, so SSR equivalents. But so we'll probably have more to talk about with Neve at another point, but we're going to cover her Bond story at this point. So this her Bond story begins. We get a phone call, and it's a message from Neve, and it's addressed to us, Alice, and Ludmilla. So this all takes place like before Tove's stuff. So I really should have had it beforehand, but I'm not. I'm having it here at the end. She's saying, "Hey, I found polar bears," and so we're like, "Okay, so what's going on?" So we go to see Alice and Ludmilla at the Unlimited base, and they explain to us that Neve is essentially like a polar bear fanatic. That all she wants to do is find polar bears and like cuddle with them because they look so cuddly and warm and whatnot. And to make that happen, she has like a polar bear like shawl that she wears, as you can see in her pictures, and also that she takes on a lot of bear habits, like just wandering the surface by herself and like hibernating all the time. It's like, okay, so then we go to start tracking her down. We get a lot of the discussion about the hibernation and doing bear-like stuff, and Lumilla's like, it's cool, she's really good at tracking people, and she's always there when we need her, so kind of like YOLO. Eventually, we trace her trail to a den, and there we find Neve sleeping. So Alice prods to wake her up, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I didn't find a polar bear. It was just ice that was shaped like a polar bear." Fucking Neve. And that's sort of like, okay, well, good, you're safe. That's all that really matters at the end of the day. So Neve at this point, after we chit-chat and get introduced to her, because we never met her before, right? That's the whole thing. And so Unlimited's like, hey, check it out. This is the commander. He's super nice. And she's like, oh, you're like a burly bear. I just want to cuddle with you and squeeze you tight. And we're like, hold up. You're a Nikke. You'll crush my bones. Please don't do that. And then she's like, I want to go look for polar bears. And Ludmilla and Alice are like, cool, we're going to go back to base. Are you coming? And we're like, no, we'll stay with Neve for a while. We'll get to know her a little bit better and see what's going on here. And she's like, hooray. And so we go out, Neve gets super drowsy, and we remember that Ludmilla tells us that she likes to sleep a lot, so we got to like keep her awake. So we start talking to her about how she tracks Arctic predators and all that stuff, how she, like all her methods, like footprints, leftover scraps and whatnot, and then talks about how maybe instead of trying to search for the polar bears, we should create like a bait or trap for them, and then maybe they'll come to us. And she's concerned, let's see, okay. And then she mentions using us as bait, but we're like, no, that's not a good idea. It'll probably just bring raptures over here. And she's like, no, that's true. And then she talks about sleeping again, and so we question her actual desire to find polar bears, which makes her be like, no. And he's like, okay, so what's the real reason you're looking for all these like polar bears and shit and whatnot? And she's like, no reason. I don't need a reason. Like there's nothing more complicated like this or that, or like a back history, or like eat your parents or whatever. And she's like, nope. just, that's what I feel like looking for. So we're like, all right, well, let's go find some bait. And definitely not me. And then Neve's like, probably not you. So we determined that fish are going to be the best thing. Well, Neve determines that humans are the diet of polar bears, which is not true at all. She's crazy. But we're like, no, fish. Fish will do. So let's go find fish. So we find a little lake area, and it's super hard. And so we're like, all right, let's bust through. And she's like, all right, I'm going to take a nap. And you're like, what? And we like wake her up, and we're like, hey, what are you doing? And she's like, don't worry, if the raptors come, I'll wake up and protect you. And then she falls back asleep. So we're like, okay. So then we try to smash into a hole into the ice. We can't do that. We search around for a hole that's already there, and we find a really teeny tiny hole, but then we're able to use like some rocks and sticks and whatever to like bash the hole open bigger. And then we find like a sharp stick, and we're able to like spear fish for a while. After some time, we're able to get enough fish, and we're like, all right, this should be enough for a bait. And so then we like drag the fish back over to Neve and try to wake her up, but she refuses to wake up. And then we like sneeze, and we're like, ruh-roh, it's getting colder. Neve will not open, so we decide we're just going to hang out, lean against her massive bosom, and wait for her to wake up, which she does pretty quickly. And then she gets mad at us for not having woken her up as soon as we got back, but she's very impressed by our fish catch. And she's like, why are you so frustrated? And I'm like, why are you so crazy? And so then we're talking about building like a big thing of fish, or maybe placing them in different places, try a little polar bear out. And we decide that if we're going to go around this little area and place a bunch of little bait areas. So we start doing that. And after we place fish in a bunch of different places, we find that, and there's a little concern that we're going to run into raptors, but we don't run into raptors. We run into a giant polar bear, ruh-roh. So we throw fish at it and run, and it chases us. And we eventually get to like a little burrow area that we like sneak on in and are hiding in. And the polar bear is like trying to claw at us and dig us out and all this stuff. And we're like calling for Neve, but she doesn't answer. And so we call Delta. You can call Delta or Yunwa, but either way, you get the explanation about how polar bears are like the most angry and meanest of all bears. They're the deadliest. But that, there's two things you can do with bears. You can either play dead, or you can try to make yourself as big and impressive as possible. And if I remember correctly, I'm not like a bear person. I love bears, but I'm not like, I don't know anything about them. I just think they're cool. I don't know about polar bears, but I think with brown bears, you want to play dead, and black bears, you want to be as impressive as possible. I think that's kind of like the general advice I heard when I was like an Eagle Scout or whatever. Anyway, it's been a long time. So he tries to make himself look dangerous, and the bear's like just pissed off even more, and so we just pretend to be dead. And then the polar bear eventually just like lays down in front of the burrow, and we're like, oh, well, I guess we're fucking dead. By cold and all that shit. So we lay there for a while, and then it gets getting colder and colder, and we're like, oh, fuck. And our vision starts to go blurry, and we start to get real groggy and whatnot, and then bang, bang, bang. And then we hear Neve's voice, and all that racket managed to scare the bear off, but we're like too weak and passed out to be able to do anything. And then eventually we just completely pass out. By the time we regain consciousness, we're back in the Ark. We're back home in the outpost, and Lumilla and Alice are looking out for us, and they explain that Neve brought them over here, and that they came to like help us recover because she went back out, and that she swore to Lumilla that she's done searching for polar bears. She looked really sad, like she was crying and all this stuff, really shook her up and everything. So then we kind of felt bad for breaking her dreams and whatnot. A few days later, after we fully recovered, we try to contact Neve, who was woken up, and we have something important we want to tell her. So we ask her to come find us, and then we hide. So eventually she like rolls on over to the outpost, comes into our room, is looking around, is like super confused. And then at that point we like realized that we were going to give her like a surprise, but we don't know how to like spring the surprise. So we just like jump out. We're like, hey, we're dressed up like a polar bear. And we're really upset that we're not upset, but we're trying to comfort her with the idea that like, oh, hey, you're done looking polar bears, but here, yeah, I can be a polar bear, and yada, 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 like some really kind of cute, sweet stuff. And then Neve's like, why would you think I'm done looking for polar bears? And we're like, that's what Lumilla said. And she's like, no, she misunderstood. They're all hibernating, so there's no reason to look for them right now. I'm going to look for them later. In fact, I'm just going to sleep a bunch right now instead. And then we're like, well, but you were crying and everything. And she's like, I wasn't crying. I was just tired. And my eyes were watering from being so sleepy. Then they froze to my cheeks. And we're like, oh. But she's still like super happy that we like did all this stuff for her. And so she wants to give us a big hug. So we're like, sure. So we get a big bear hug. And then she's like, you're so soft and warm. And then she like lays down and falls asleep. That's fucking Neve. Anyway, that's the Bond Stories. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and join us again, or me again, in a couple weeks for, it's the Hot Spring episode with Ludmilla Winter, like the SSR, or the redone Ludmilla, who's much better than the crappy Ludmilla, for as a character, not as a character, but as a actual playable like Nikke in the game, and then the Mika SSR, which will be fun. And it's another long one. So like I said, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll catch you guys later. Bye.